Hi everyone, thanks for joining the resilient. I don't know.
Resilient. Hi everyone, thanks for joining the Resilient Purpose
podcast today. We hope that you enjoyed this episode, and please like and subscribe to the channel for more updates and future episodes. Plus, ring that bell. Bye.
Mental toughness itself would be the ability to withstand in any storm or continue standing strong, being resilient, being able to continue and know that if you go down, you can get right back up.
You have so much more in you that you can give, and just like reinforcing positive reinforcement, like asking them how they felt when they were done doing something, and then being like, wow, I didn't think that I would be able to do 50 sit-ups in a row, and I just feel so good that I was able to accomplish that.
If they don't believe that they can do something, they're not going to do it. Whether you think you can or you can't, you're probably right. Introduce them to a truth or help them with an I am statement.
Today I have Emily Tracewell and Dani Almeyda. We're going to talk about mental toughness, and so we're really excited about this subject, but mental toughness in the world of sports, in the world of just taking care of ourselves physically, but also in the world of mental health. And we're going to talk about how to build mental toughness, things that can kind of get in the way of our mental toughness, and just overall, how do we use our body and self to create resilience? I think probably everybody equates mental toughness with sports, but I would add, we could probably relate it to anything, fitness, weight loss, whatever, but mental toughness, I think the term is very interesting to me, and I don't know, but I'm curious. There's a quote that always sticks in my head. Yogi Berra said, baseball is 90% mental and the other half is physical. And I was curious, if that's relatable to everything we do. How much of our performance is mental?
Well, I played college volleyball, and I would say the more mental toughness you have, the better the performance. Even if someone's more talented than you, if you have the drive to make something a habit by doing it over and over and over and driving that dedication and mental toughness in you, then you'll perform better than the person that's even more talented than you.
Why do you think that is?
I just think that you become motivated to do something, and then it becomes a habit, which leads to the mental toughness. So if I would play back row. So if I was telling myself, please serve me the ball, serve it to me every single time, so I get more repetition to be able to do it as perfect as I can get it every single time, then that's going to build up my mental toughness of when I make a mistake or something, that I'm able to just flip a switch and get back on track, rather than the person that is just talented and is just going out there just to be able to say they have the most skills on their team or something, and not really challenging themselves on the court. Then I feel my performance will be better because it's for the team rather than the individual.
Yeah, I think I 100% agree with that quote, and maybe even more than 90% mental. I think that a lot of times it's whether you're showing up physically, and I played volleyball also, and I played back row in college too. So, physically I could be there, but if I didn't know that I was confident enough to be able to pass that ball, to take that ball to where it needed to go, and knew that I was confident in my abilities, and then I could continue to show up and show up and show up and show up every single time. It's different. Whereas if I made a mistake and then I get down on myself and I say I suck, and then it doesn't matter how strong I am on the outside, if I don't believe that I can do it, it's going to just keep, declining and declining.
Compared to being better than or performing better than somebody with talent who doesn't necessarily, would you say it has a lot to do with, I know I need to keep working at it, the determination to kind of work on your craft, whereas if I have all the talent and people tell me every day that I have the talent, I don't necessarily have the drive to work, because why would I need to, because I'm so talented?
Yeah.
That your mindset is shaped better to handle things like mistakes, because you see yourself as a work in progress of always trying to better yourself. Whereas I would imagine if you're touted as the most talented, the idea of you not succeeding is probably pretty devastating. Have anybody seen that? Maybe the people you've coached or your former teammates or anything like that?
Every single day I'm if we're working on these specific skills, and every single day we're we're perfecting them. If we come up against a team that has girls that are more athletic than us, but we're able to fall back on our skill that we know that we already have, even like if we're down or something, then we can pull ourselves out of it, rather than somebody that is just talented, and if they make a common mistake, then they fall down easier. So even with some athletes that I've had, like, they'll be way up here when they're doing good in the game, then one mistake happens and they need a lot of encouragement because their mental toughness isn't as good to be able to build themselves back up. Like, they need it from their teammates.
So their emotional stability is more volatile based on, it's too tied to performance. Like, their ability to stay regulated in the game is dependent on how well they do.
Yes.
How would you guys define mental toughness? Like, in your mind, what is mental toughness?
I would define mental toughness as a skill that's developed over time. And mental toughness itself would be the ability to, withstand in any storm or continue standing strong, being resilient, being able to continue and know that if you go down, you can get right back up. That's kind of what I look at as mental toughness. So whether that's on a volleyball court or dealing with personal life crises or something in the gym, and you just want to really, tackle that next step. I think it's the ability to continue withstanding and knowing who you are in that moment. So I think it's developed over time as a skill, though, through getting comfortable being uncomfortable.
So elements of trusting yourself. So you have to kind of somehow trust yourself that you're going to be okay through whatever adversity that you face.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think having a really strong sense of knowing who you are and is really what that's all about. If you know who you are and you can believe that, remember that all the time, I think that's a really good way to start.
Emily, do you have anything to add to that definition, or?
Yeah, I agree with Dani, and I think it's like a learned mindset that like gives you different tools. Like you said, being resilient and having confidence and just being able to keep going even when you're hit down or when the going gets tough.
So learned, how do people learn? How do people learn it? Like, where does it, I mean, I was thinking of, like, I coach my kids in youth soccer. I mean, but it's, a lot of times in the beginning, it's all about, okay, learn how to dribble, learn how to kick the ball, learn how to know where to position. How does mental toughness, or where do you develop that, or where is that, what kind of drives that?
Sometimes I think it can be taught, and other times I think it's just like feeding specifically like off a teammate. You see a teammate that has the good mental toughness and you're like, oh, I want to be on the same page as that girl. Or your coach is like constantly cheering you on, whether it's like lifting you up when you need like a little extra push for that last sprint in practice, or whether it's just like showing them successes that other people have had in life based on their mental toughness.
So I've done a presentation on this specifically to a group of women, and I kind of broke it down into four pieces. And one is to like know your truth. So know who you are, and which I believe is awesomely and wonderfully made and undeniably powerful. Like, that's what I tell myself. That's what I tell other people. But then I tell them, like, so know the truth, press reset. So get yourself dialed in, like be where you are at that moment. Don't be everywhere else. Get comfortable being uncomfortable, which I can go into that more specifically on what that means, and then keep showing up. And I think that kind of going through those steps is a really good way to continue to develop mental toughness, so that every time, that you're faced with something, that you're able to kind of go back through those steps.
How much of that is really, do you guys feel should be developed really early on? It's like the most talented get the most opportunity, they get the most encouragement. I mean, talking like coaching in youth rec, you'll see like all the bad players way back on D, and then you'll have all the good players that can score way up top, and no one really rotates and plays different positions. We emphasize and talk mostly to the ones that have all the talent, but don't really talk to the ones that need extra help and encouragement. I'm just wondering, like, sometimes how we maybe either implicitly or explicitly shape that mental toughness, either for the worse or for the better.
I'd argue that sometimes not talking to those players that aren't getting as much attention is shaping their mental toughness in itself. It just depends on which way they choose to take it. And I do think that it starts at a young age, and it starts at home, and it starts in youth sports. But I guess it depends on like what, who's been pouring into you and how can you pour into people. Because if a kid has no self-worth other than scoring a goal or doing good on the field or playing a game, right, being on the field at all, then they're going to put their value in that item instead of in who they are. You know what I mean? So I don't know that I answered. I don't know that I answered your question, but I do think it starts young, and I do think it's something that needs to be, again, developed. But you're right, there are certain people that are going to have more access to that depending on who's pouring into them. Right.
When you're also emphasizing that it has to be built in other avenues than sports, right? Like, so if we put all our eggs into, and that maybe brings back to do we limit a person's mental toughness if all we have a kid play is one sport and only do that and do all this training and that, and then you talk about kids that burn out and kids that can't really, they lose their drive, because that's all they've done, and then it just kind of, they don't know who they are outside of that. What's their identity outside of just sports? What
Dani said about how setting the tone at like a young age. So, and you said the kids that are talented like get more attention when they're younger and those types of things. It makes me think of like the athletes that continue to play the sport like into high school, maybe knowing that they're not as talented as the other people playing, but they obviously developed the mental toughness from the young age to still continue to go to every single practice, go and do every single workout, even though they may never reach the level of their teammates and get to play, but they are still a part of the team and they're still putting in all that extra effort. So I guess even if without the attention, they're still developing the mental toughness that they need to continue. I would say those people would continue that out past the sport because of what they went through throughout their years of their life already.
I agree 100%. That was kind of where I was going to. I think that even if they're not getting the star attention from the coaches in that way that the star athletes are, those kids are showing up anyways. So they're going to be able to take that forward into life, like you said. I mean, I remember my dad always telling me I had a lot of injuries through my career as an athlete, and my dad always was like kind of telling me as you've been injured, you have to work even harder than the kids that are already working now. Like you have to work even harder. You're coming from behind. And he always tried to hammer in that sports are just like a little microcosm of life. It's just that everything you do on the court, like I played team sports, everything you do on the court, you're going to see exact reflections of that as you get older. And so I think that there's just so many avenues and areas that these kids will continue to learn and grow from, whether they're star athletes or not, if they just keep showing up and, applying the same tactics that they use to get themselves there in regular daily life.
Were there other elements to where you just have to work harder because of kind of that position, to where that was maybe seen as a challenge or something like, oh yes, I'm going to do that, versus, oh gosh, that's really overwhelming to kind of have to work that much harder to get to where, you would want to be or whatever?
Yeah, I guess I always saw it as a challenge. I mean, I'm a pretty competitive person, so hard work has never been something that I've struggled with, I guess. So probably because of that, though, you know what I mean? I think kind of along that same line of having a challenge and being faced with different things, being uncomfortable, having things that you're dealing with, I think that is where toughness develops, right? I had a challenge, I could either back away or I could fight against it and continue forward. And that's, I think, where there's issues sometimes moving forward, especially with today's youth. I think that a lot of times we don't allow our children to get uncomfortable. We want to do things for them. We want to do everything for somebody else instead of allowing them the challenge so that they can, start that process of developing and knowing how to push against a challenge and not to just back down.
So you want people to embrace the suck, right? Like we have to kind of embrace. Well, I mean, there's definite value to that. To kind of, you have to change your perspective on hard work. Like, it's not a responsibility or something I have to do. It's something that I am wanting to do because of the payoff. Can you think of other examples or examples of ways to help people kind of embrace the suck or be comfortable with discomfort, or how to help people through that?
To embrace the suck?
Yeah.
I've always said that, like, you need your athletes to, like, buy into your, like, coaching style or whatever it is, the end goal that you're wanting to get to. So, like, some high school coaches or any coach in general is just doing it just to be a coach. Well, I want to do it so that they're learning stuff that they can use later in life, not just like on the volleyball court. So I kind of like plan it all out as to, like, you're buying into this program. This is the result that we want to get. And as long as you're working hard each day and showing up, then our goal is to get to that end point. So, like, each year we've won more games than we did the last year, and I'm like, these girls put in the work, like, they worked hard all summer, and then, like, just gradually the other athletes are kind of just buying into it by watching whatever the end goal was from the year before that. They went through the suck, and now if you want to be a part of this, our culture that we're starting now, then you can go through it too, or you can be a part of the team and still just show up every single day. But these are the opportunities that you have, and you can either rise to the challenge or you don't have to. That's your choice.
This is so setting the culture for people to enter into. They're already entering into a culture that embraces the suck.
Yeah.
For that payoff.
Yep.
Right. I talk about this a lot in the mental health world, or just even in working with kids, is comparing yourself to yourself. So there's an element of, you weren't saying, well, let's see how you compare to some other school. You're saying, how did we do since last year? Like, okay, last year we made it here, or we were able to accomplish this. This year we were able to kind of improve on that. That's a huge success, even though we didn't get the accolades maybe of a state championship.
Right.
Yeah. Well, culture specifically, I think is developed by, obviously you're the people around you and your coach. So, like, she's encouraging that. Like, so from a coaching cue standpoint, there's, like, if you consistently tell people that this is the way it is and this is how it's going to be, then they'll start buying into that and showing up in that mindset as well. I think that it doesn't always have to suck. So I like to say, like, get comfortable being uncomfortable. And like I said before, I know I keep saying this, but so many people are so used to being comfortable that they're not willing to step outside their comfort zone. So ways that are like a practical solution of, like, trying to build that would be, like, try a new thing, like, that you've never done before, be a first timer, learn something new, eat a new food. Like, those things are, I know it sounds silly, but I feel like showing up in little ways like that can really change that mental toughness. But also in terms of being in the gym, like, we use that with time under tension or work capacity style exercise. So, how long can you stay in a plank position? Or for us, as you know, Doug, we do a lot of crawling. So with the knees up off the floor, like, okay, can you crawl for 10 minutes straight? I know that if I put someone to crawl for 10 minutes straight and they do it, like, their mental tenacity is there. Like, that it's all in here. And I've coached people through these drills, right? And I one time I had this mom that set a goal to crawl 10 minutes, and she came in and she did not think she was going to be able to do it. And sadly, she put her knee down with just 1 minute to go. One minute to go. So at 9 minutes, it was like 9 minutes and 5 seconds. So she had 55 seconds left, but she didn't know. Like, she didn't, it's like, she didn't, like, we had told her, but she wasn't listening. Right. And she just thought, there's no way I could do it. You know what she did was she waited 20 minutes and she did it again, and she did it. because she knew she could. She's like, okay, I know I can make it 9 minutes. And so I think being able to practice like physically, the physical resistance, I think that's what I love most is showing someone how much stronger they really are. I think that reflects directly into your mental toughness. So being able to like come into the gym and physically be challenged and keep showing up for a challenge and keep pushing yourself, whether it's competing against yourself or just, whatever your program is, like showing up and then doing it and, continuing to improve. Like, I think that is how you can really continue to develop mental toughness too. So not just in the athletic world, but just in movement. It's just a good way to give you resistance and give you a challenge, get you out of your comfort zone. But then all of a sudden, like everything starts being easy. When you know how to tackle hard things aren't hard anymore. Challenging
your body physically is probably one of the easier ways to build that mental toughness, because it's so readily available to you to kind of challenge yourself physically and recognize that you can push yourself through that or tolerate holding on to resistance for so long or whatever, and being able to push yourself. Is that something that you have going into any type of training session or into any practice of how am I going to stretch my kids each time?
In the beginning of the season, we'll do like a goal setting. So like, what do you want to accomplish as an individual? What do you want our team to be able to accomplish? And like, what do you want the end of the season to look like for you? So then with the physical aspect, we'll go through like a round of exercises and record like where they are at that point. And then at the end of the season, we'll do the same thing and see like how much progress they made through. And then we'll do that the same like with our team. But when she said the planking, it reminded me of like a challenge of mental toughness that we did with planking. I was just like, we're all going to plank and see who can hold the plank the longest. We're just going to keep going until everyone falls down. And we came down to like 2 people, and one was a girl that's like always on the workout grind, working out the whole time. And then it was a girl that was like kind of jumping on the bandwagon of wanting to work out and better herself. And one of our teammates made a comment that like, oh, Lexi and Lily are the last ones standing. And when she heard the teammate's name, that like the one that works out all the time, she's like, oh, I can never be her. So she just quit.
Right.
And then like eventually as the season went on and on and on, and they were like constantly competing, then she finally realized that she was able to develop that same mental toughness as her teammate.
I keep finding myself in the same place as this person who has the reputation.
Yeah.
So now I start to believe that about myself. I can now, this wasn't a fluke anymore.
Yeah.
I deserve to be here.
Yep.
We do goal setting as well. So for some larger ones, so like I wouldn't ask someone to crawl 10 minutes out of the blue, but we're always going to push them a little bit outside their comfort zone. And we try to get them to have a win. So they should be either trying something new or maybe going up in weight, or, like we're constantly finding ways to teach them how to challenge themselves, right? To gauge where they are in that moment. Like, can I do more? Is this challenging me enough? What am I here for? Am I using my time as best as I can? And then also kind of being like, well, actually you could do a little bit more than that too. Say someone's deadlifting and they go to pick up a 40-pound kettlebell when I know they can lift an 80-pound kettlebell. And they look at the size of it and they're like, no, I can't do that. And then you tell a 60-year-old woman to go pick up an 80-pound kettlebell and she does it 10 times. It's like, boom, big things happen. So we always do that.
You bring in an 80-year-old that just are 60.
Oh, it does happen all the time. I'm not kidding.
Well, I was just thinking you have this 80-year-old come out every time just to show that the 80-year-old can lift the kettlebell. That's your secret. That's your secret method. So, are we working with people's belief systems? Like not like belief systems and like family values and all that, but belief in themselves. And like, is that something that you guys process? Is there a process element to everything that you do? Or is this something that you feel like you just let happen naturally? Or is it something that you process to help people gain that awareness of their success or their belief?
I mean, we tell people verbally, you are awesomely and wonderfully made and much stronger than you think. And it's literally written on the walls in our gym. You are awesomely, wonderfully made. And so I think sure, not everyone believes everything right away. Sometimes you have to show them how strong they are, and that's why we're constantly challenging. But I think that, yes, it's 100% belief system. If they don't believe that they can do something, they're not going to do it. Like, it's as easy as that, whether you think whether you think you can or you can't, you're probably right. I think you've probably all heard that quote before. I don't know who said it. If you can introduce them to a truth or help them with an I am statement that they can, identify with, I think that's really, really, really important.
Yeah, I agree with her. I'm like constantly saying when we're working out or when we're doing a drill and they're getting tired, I'm like, your mind might be telling you that you're tired, but you have so much more in you that you can give. And just like reinforcing positive reinforcement, like asking them how they felt when they were done doing something and then being like, wow, I didn't think that I would be able to do 50 sit-ups in a row, and I just feel so good that I was able to accomplish that. Right. In those types of aspects.
If you didn't ask that question, would that kid have made that realization? Like, maybe, is it naturally happening? I don't know. I mean, I'm sure it's possible that it is, but is it important to kind of try to bring those things to light, like helping them put the spotlight on those realizations?
Yeah, I think it like differs from person to person on certain things that you're doing. I think some people will get a good positive takeaway from it, and other people, like you said, they won't think of it themselves, so they need like the extra encouragement.
I think from a coaching perspective too, if you have a coach out there, I don't care if they're a sports coach or a fitness coach or a life coach that isn't working on their individual's beliefs, then they're not a coach. Like, that is the job of a coach. It is to instill like an insanely strong amount of belief and the individual's abilities and skills. That is what coaching is about. It's a huge part of coaching is really to show them what they're capable of and to make sure that they believe it, or to do your best to do that. I mean, and again, you can't always convince everybody, and mindset, depending on and Doug, you're working with people with traumas and things like that, and how that plays into self-limiting beliefs and all of that. But that's the job of a coach, is to continue to build up their beliefs in themselves as much as possible. The
exercise is really your tool, but ultimately you're working with their brain, right? You're changing their belief system, or the beliefs about themselves, their value, things like that. Are there things that we have seen out there that gets in the way of that? Like, maybe not through your gym or on your team, but you've seen in sports or fitness in general that kind of squashes mental toughness, or makes it harder to deal with those adversities and that discomfort?
On sports teams, it can be like sometimes a specific player could bring down the culture and the mental toughness, or even I really, like, in the beginning of the year, I'll be like, this is our team and we think positively about everyone. We're always encouraging everyone. So even when someone on your team has a bad night, obviously parents talk, and when we go home, we just want to tell our parents that those are our teammates and we're positive about everyone, and we don't want to be talking negatively about our teammates, because that could come back onto the court. So if your parents have something negative to say, you just say, that's my teammate, I don't want to talk about them, and we just move on from that. So sometimes it can be like an outside source.
Right. I think that's awesome. You're training your players to train their parents on how to be, good sport parents.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, it's a big deal. Like, one wrong message sent to the athlete can just be like cancerous for your team, no matter how good your team is.
Well, how does that play out? I mean, do you think of an example of how that plays out, or how that cancerous kind of plays out in the athlete? Because you don't see the direct words that come from the parent to the player. Oh
yeah, it actually happened. I was like, one of my players were on a really big high, like getting this many kills every single game, bringing up the team, encouraging others. Then all of a sudden it just like started depleting. And I was like, I can't see like any difference in her in practice. It's just like the game atmosphere. And so finally I just reached out to the parent and I asked if like anything was going on, and like something was brought up about it. So after I like talked to her individually, like resolved the problem, and that she was able to like work through what was happening, then we were able to like build her back up. But it like depleted her mental toughness, even though the parent was talking about someone else, like, because she just felt like she just like went into a little shell.
Right. Well, because I'm wondering if is that elements, and this might be kind of also in the fitness world where we're always talking about all these outside forces, that we put more responsibility in those things as being connected to my performance. Well, you didn't get this many because so-and-so your teammate wasn't picking up the slack, or you couldn't reach your fitness goals because so-and-so, like all this kind of noise that is distracting you from focusing on what you can control and what's really your responsibility for those things.
Distractions like fear, ego, resentment, all of these things, play in. And so in the gym world, for example, if a woman comes in and has had a really, tough day with her spouse or her partner that is telling her, the headphone just fell out, been a jerk all day and she's a terrible mother, and why can't you keep the house clean, and why can't you do this, or, whatever it is. And then she comes to the gym and she thinks she's not able to do things there too, like all of those things start to seep in. Now they can go the other way too, and that could be like your stress reliever and you're just Hulk out at the gym. But
right.
I think that all of those things come into play in terms of what input is coming into your system. Is it positive reinforcement? Is it negative reinforcement? And how do you respond to those things? If you know who you are, what other people think and what other people say does not matter as much, and as someone that has struggled in the past with worrying about what other people think, or as an athlete, like worrying about what other people think when you mess up, or you weren't the reliable person that you were supposed to be on the court, like it's hard, but it's also.
But isn't that common though? And as we grow up in kids, because of the high stakes, like making a mistake is connected more with you're not going to make it. Is there a balance between, okay, you do have to perform to kind of get somewhere. Like I have to be good enough in volleyball to make your team. But then once I'm there, do I want to go further in that? Or is it just, I just like to be there? How do I keep that high stakes from poisoning my look at mistakes in a way that's going to be useful in a teachable moment?
I think what's really interesting about sports is that it's a game, right? Sports are generally a game, unless it's like gymnastics or something but it's generally a game based on somebody doing better than the other person. Something has to go wrong or not as good as the other person did something. And that is literally the sport, right? Right. There's always going to be someone that isn't doing something at that moment that maybe they wish they could have, whether it was a flagrant mistake, like I
called a timeout and then in the final four, like Chris Webber.
Yeah, like went the wrong way. Right. Yeah, but or I just wasn't fast enough to get that dig, or I anticipated the wrong direction. And I think being able to understand that it's just a sport. And I don't know too, if you've noticed this, but there's a lot of athletes out there that are no longer athletes, right? They're out of their sport, and their identity, it's those gone. First couple years right after a college athlete is done with their sport, is insane. Or a professional athlete, if you played your sport for your entire life, 20 years of investing everything you had and who you are in this sport, and then all of a sudden it's done. It is crazy to see what happens with those individuals, what's next for them, right? Being able to see how you can learn from those things and wrap your identity on not just being the athletes or not just being, I think is really important. But yeah, I do think the stakes are high for kids, and it can be debilitating. I mean, I just think if you put all of your identity and you make the stakes really high, that I have to achieve this or my life is over, who am I going to be without this sport or without this, opportunity? Then that is a huge dose of adversity that
could be equated with trauma, right? Like not necessarily in terms of most people think of traumatic because of like abuse, but traumatic because of the loss, like the intense loss of something that I've shaped my whole world around. But that can happen at a I guess a lesser extent than a professional athlete losing their identity through retirement. But the encouragement starts to shape their identity as being, that's who you are. We played this team, and the coach's son is really good, and he's really fast, and he's doing really great. But one of the things I always notice when I play with him is, as long as you disrupt the kid a little bit, he falls apart. Like you get an early goal, or you just disrupt him every time he's trying to do it, he just falls apart. Like he can only see himself as being, I got to be successful, I got to score the goals. And then when I don't, it's like when it works for him, it works. But then anytime you disrupt the kid, he's like lost it. And even the parent coach is losing it, getting on him like, come on, this type of thing. And it's just like, are there other things that get in the way of mental toughness or make it hard?
I think just themselves. So outside forces in themselves, like, I don't know, that's where I would go with that.
Right.
You get into that whole cycle of yourself, right? Like just a mistake. I'm not good enough. Another mistake. Or let me try to do better. Oh, another mistake. I'm not good enough. And it just keeps getting cycled and cycled and cycled. And it's harder to get out of that cycle when that's what you believe.
So you kind of have, like, you believe kind of poorly about yourself, and then you try something and fail. And so that reinforces that. And so then your confidence is even lower when you go try something else. How do you break that cycle? What are ways to break that cycle? Because there's an element of them that's wanting to be successful, but they keep kind of going against the roadblocks. Is it looking at challenge that they have in front of them, and is it appropriate for them and what they can handle, or how do you try to break that cycle?
I was going to say either like reframe the situation. So, try to look at it through a different light or a different perspective. And I don't have a specific example necessarily, but if you're on the court and you keep missing your serve, reflect on, okay, what does this look like? Where can I go back? I don't know. Or sometimes just teaching them to just erase it, right? Like, I don't know if you guys watch Ted Lasso.
Yes, love Ted Lasso.
You guys watch Ted Lasso? Mm-hmm. Okay. And Ted Lasso tells one of the players that is a great player, but always in his head, he tells him, be like a goldfish, like, because the goldfish just forgets and just swims and just keeps swimming, right? Like, just forgets. And so he said, be like a goldfish. And Sam went out there, I think his name's Sam, went out there and was like a goldfish. Okay. Like, it's simple. Like, okay, just try to forget about it. So there's that avenue that you can always go down. And then the other one is like present them with a way to win. Like, so give them a series of opportunities to get a win, even if it's not the same exact example. I think that the more repetitions on getting that win or being able to overcome a certain scenario, whether it's related to that area of tension or not, I think that is really big. So being able to point out those wins and help them feel them, I think, is how you break that cycle. Is you need to show them that they can get a series of wins.
So should you have all your trainees or athletes watch Ted Lasso as part of, because there's so much in there. We should have an episode on Ted Lasso.
I was kind of going to say the same thing as her, like, just forget. Every single volleyball game, I'm like, there's 25 points that both teams have to get. It doesn't matter how you get them. So if you give away 1 point, you just forget about that mistake and you just try to move on and like build each other back up to get the point. And then her talking about serving, like setting the short-term goals. So like if they constantly weren't getting the ball over the net from the serving line, maybe have them move up to the 10-foot line and say, we're going to try to get 10 serves over at the 10-foot line, and then gradually like move back. Or like refer to, sometimes I'll video them and I'll be like, this is what you look like as you're making this mistake that you're discouraged about. So maybe we can like try to tweak something and do it in a different way, and then record them doing it like the successful way. That way they can see the difference. in this, refer back to it.
I know you, I think I might know your answer to this, Dani, just in terms of original strength and pressing reset and stuff. Do you guys talk to athletes or the people that you work with about how they carry themselves? Like how they walk into the room or walk into the locker room or walk on the court? And can you speak a little to that as far as the aspect of just how you present yourself going into something?
You know, we talk to people about keeping eyes up and standing tall, like walking with purpose. Mm-hmm. And I think that like kind of those three things reflect on, you know, that pattern within your brain that tells you like, oh, I'm standing tall, I'm looking up, I'm not looking down. Like you're not in that defensive, you know, lowered protective position, right? That posture. So we, you know, we'll encourage people to look forward, keep the shoulders back, and again, walk with purpose, even if they don't believe it. Like, I mean, I've straight up told people to pretend,
right?
Like I've told my son, actually, my son's a good example. He has gotten really down on himself, and he's only 8, but, you know, gotten really down on himself about something. And I was like, I want you to pretend like you are a superstar football player. Mm-hmm. Like, and even if he didn't believe it, I just want you to pretend like, and see how he carries himself. And I think it's really cool to see sometimes, like when you tell someone to pretend, like get into a character mode for a second, what is the difference there?
Yeah, it's kind of the same. Like in the beginning of the season, I'll be like, if you're a part of this team, this is Fort Frye Volleyball. Like we have a specific culture of how we carry ourselves. We want other people to know when we're at other schools or other places that you are Fort Frye Volleyball. Mm-hmm. So you walk onto the court feeling confident and positive that your team's going to come and get the job done, whether or not we win or not. And then we'll talk about it afterwards, what we can do differently. Just those type of positive things are what we talk about.
Do you guys use visualization at all? One of the things that strikes, because I was thinking about, I read this book called, it's from a sports psychologist out of the UK, Daniel Abrams, and he wrote a book called Soccer Brain. It's all about kind of the mindset of the soccer player. And so one of the things he would talk about visualization is he would want his players to visualize not scoring the goal per se, but like doing some type of tangible skill that they know how to do, like something that is controllable. Like I am visualizing myself being quick on the dribble or being able to do some type of, you know, dribbling move or good crisp passes or whatever, but never like just the visualization of me scoring, because those are things that are oftentimes somewhat out of our control to a certain extent. We can only really control kind of what we can do physically with the ball or whatever. Is there elements of visualization in either of your worlds as far as what you do with your athletes or the people that you train?
Yeah, so I made my players do this once. Well, my high school coach made us do this when we were in the state championship. Mm-hmm. She was like, I want everybody to go out there and do their warm-up without the ball. And we were like,
that's weird, right?
Without the balls, it's like stands of people were like, okay, this is embarrassing. Like, why are we doing this? But it was just like a time for us to like be like calm and relaxed and just think about the movements that we're going through. Like, even without the ball, I can visualize what I need to do to make a good pass and those types of things. So sometimes I make mine do that. Like, just sometimes even close their eyes and just go through the motions of how they know how to make the perfect pass even without the ball there. And they think I'm crazy, but I still just make them do it anyways. I'm like, your body will just remember even if the ball's not there or not. So it'll just be a natural movement for you when you're in the actual game.
So when my kid goes to your volleyball camp, she's going to be doing a lot of like, yeah.
She'll be like, I didn't really.
They don't ever give me a ball. I don't get it. How are we supposed to get good at this?
Right.
That'll be interesting. What about you, Dani? And I am looking at you right now. So
yeah, I definitely, from my volleyball days and sports days, 100% visualizations. Like I would imagine the pass as I'm taking it in. Imagine like the perfect scenario. Now I did always imagine the full thing. Like I'm just going to pass it. It's going to go where I want. I'm going to pass it. It's going to go where I want. But in the gym, yes, we do. It's a little different, right? Like it's not, you imagine your perfect rep, but we've also encouraged people to imagine the way that their body moves and the way that their body looks. And actually, I think Arnold Schwarzenegger used this as a way to build some of his muscles. I know that sounds crazy, by visualization. Like, so, he built part of his body by visualizing that he was building his muscles, which, it wasn't just, pumping iron, It was visualizing the body he wanted to have, and making a picture of that and playing that over and over again.
Well,
go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, we talk about how the brain doesn't really know the difference between kind of fantasy and reality. So like when you visualize, it's actually a rehearsal. You're activating those same elements of the brain. When you visualize your body doing that, you're stimulating those same networks because you're creating a rehearsal for it. And that's kind of the idea behind the visualization. But that's an element that if you're rehearsing yourself being mentally tough or being focused on the things that are going to make you mentally tough, that can ultimately build your mental toughness because you're learning to set your mindset to be focused on what you can control, being present, which I think is something that, Dani, you were talking about, just being able to focus on what's the important things for us to be successful is being able to stay on point with that. If I think of your example, Dani, you already had kind of this foundational mindset of I love competition. I see things as challenge, and we would see this with certain kids that I've worked with in my career, where it's like, if you tell me I can't do it, then I'm going to do it. But you could do that to another kid and they'd be like, yeah, you're right, I can't do it. How do you, someone who kind of like really struggles with that mindset, that continues to play that negative script, where do you start? Where would you first direct them to start?
I would personally start with them. I would have them press reset, make sure, and obviously I'm going to say press reset, but, get their nervous system in the right place, have them breathe, have them visualize what it is that they want. And then I would start small. If they're struggling, like she was saying before, if you're struggling getting the ball over the net for a serve, okay, well, where can we break that down and make that goal a little bit smaller? Someone wants to bench press their body weight and they can't even bench press the bar. Okay, well, where do we start there? How can we, work on other areas to build to that point? So again, I would reset them, get their mind in the right place, and then find ways to start those little wins to work towards. So teach them how to take baby steps, to keep their eyes on a goal and move forward.
Yeah. So staying regulated or finding ways to be regulated, stretching themselves, but not overwhelm them. So find a challenge that's within their wheelhouse that they can accomplish and get that success. I
was thinking of a specific thing that Brady and I actually implemented in our practices last summer. And on our team, they obviously gravitate to either their friends when we say grab a partner, or people right. that were previously on varsity or those types of things. So
familiar.
Yeah. So
right.
we were I think that we're just going to try to push a few specific people, because obviously tryouts were coming up and we're we want to see a few different things out of a few people that we want to see how far they can go. So we paired them up, this girl that is on the best workout grind with a girl that doesn't really think that she's very good or doesn't really think she can do it. And when we partnered them up with people that are uplifting and are going to make them work harder, it was an instant turnaround for some of them. And we talked about it the whole way home. We're I can't believe the difference in the specific girl's attitude when she was paired with someone that was that she knew was a little level above her, but she rose to the occasion. My
right.
coaches put me with this person. Can I be as good as this person, or can I work as hard as her, right. just to show them a little bit? And some of them did that, and we were oh, I think we're going to do that from the rest of the time, just to see what athletes will be able to persevere and do what their partner is doing and those types of things.
So what about coaches? Coaches, they really focus on how to do the particular sport or how to do the exercises, but they realize that they keep coming across challenges of mindset and they don't really know where to start. How would you help coaches start with building an athlete or someone they're training's mindset? Where would you begin with that?
Maybe work on communication tactics.
Sure.
Honestly, because you'd want that coach to be able to communicate whatever it is to that individual. But I think even stuff being able to give a compliment sandwich, right? Mm-hmm. Give a positive, give something they can work work on, relay it back to a positive. Like sometimes it's even just little things of knowing how to talk to somebody, and how to listen. I think listen to them, find out where they're at and what they need. I think that's where I think a lot of coaches probably could benefit.
What about parents? Parents want their kids to be these wonderful athletes and superstars and stuff like that. What could parents, if parents are watching this, which I'm sure a lot of them are going to be, what do parents need to know about mental toughness?
I think the parent just needs to be the cheerleader, in my personal opinion.
Okay.
Like, well, obviously we talk about like our strengths and weaknesses after each game. So like, why do they need to hear that a second time? Especially when the parent,
right,
they might know about the sport, but they don't specifically know like what we're doing in practice or like what we're working on or those types of things. So I think it's just easier for the athlete to just, obviously you want the parent to like help them become a good athlete and like work hard, like do the extra stuff. Like my dad was always like, you need to go for a run after this. You need to put in like an extra workout and like motivate me and those types of things. But like when it came to volleyball, he was never like, why'd you do it like that? Or you could have done a lot better today. He was more of like a positive reinforcement of like, oh, I liked how it looked like your team was working on this and it looked like it is working out for you now at this point.
So being encouraging, maybe just if you're wanting to encourage them to do more of things like put in the practice, put in the time, rather than
specifics,
critique about their ability or how well they're doing. Yeah. What about you, Dani? Any thoughts for parents?
Continue to be the supporter and continue to provide opportunity for your child to continue to grow, but don't try to be their coach. Don't try to, improve them. Like they're obviously in something working with a coach for a reason. Find them another coach if you need to, but don't try to be their coach. Just try to be their supporter.
But what if I've like played like college ball and professional ball and I know everything about the sport?
I would say then I guess you can be their coach.
Right.
Have you guys ever tried to teach something to a spouse or a partner or anything like that? Or it's
all
really hard,
the
right?
time. I come home with a lesson plan for my wife every single day. No, just kidding.
I mean, it just doesn't work like
too
that.
close to home,
No,
right?
it's impossible.
It diminishes their interest and engagement in the sport, right?
Oh yeah.
I was gonna say, like, at the end of the day, that kid, that person just needs someone in their corner, and they need to know that, like, when they come home, that person's going to be in their corner, even if they made a huge mistake and, the team is upset or the coach drilled them. Like, let the coach drill them, let the parent be the picker upper.
Right. Yeah. Well, I remember us coaching the younger kids, their kindergarten through second grade, and couple of the parents were yelling at the kids on my team, and I'm out there on the field because they don't know the soccer very well. And so then they would stop in the middle of the game and look over at the parents to try to understand what they were saying. And I said, don't look at your parents. You look at me, or you play the game, you listen to me, do not listen to your parents. Cause like it was distracting the heck out of them. And I'm like, stop talking to them.
Yeah.
Cause you're making it worse. Like, stop. So
yeah, that happens at all ages, not just young ages.
Right. Just, So just be the encourager. Just say, go so-and-so. And
still say that's my kid, even if they didn't make you proud on that specific day, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you guys. I don't know if we've covered as much as we would love to talk about mental toughness. I love this subject, and I'm happy to hear your guys' perspective on it. I think it's such a transferable concept to many different worlds that we're in, whether it's sports or fitness or just mental health in general. This is a very relatable subject for everybody, regardless of whether you play a sport or not. And I'm hoping that we can continue to encourage ways to build our mental resilience. I like resilience better than toughness, because sometimes I feel like toughness connotates some type of unrealistic kind of concept. Just that resilience, to be able to face adversity, face challenge, to crave and embrace that challenge, and being able to tap into our body to build that mental resilience. I appreciate it. Thank you guys for coming together.
Thanks for having us.
Glad
Nice to meet you, Emily.
Yeah, nice to meet you too.